Okay, this is just a recap, this assignment of just simplifying exponents. So again, you want to, all these problems, you want to make sure you make your line, if it's not there, and your three kind of lines for this. So you just have the top to worry about. Ignore the powers. You don't have any number bases, and you have a single variable y. Well, there are two y's, so we're going to add the powers. So the first power, we have a 3, but that has to be multiplied out by 5, which is 15, and then we have 7. So 15 plus 7 is 22. Now that 22nd power is a positive, so we want to keep it positive. So we can't really evaluate y to the 22nd power, so that's the answer. Okay, next up, the lot fractions there. So on top, ignoring the powers, you have a base of m, and you have a base of m on the bottom. There's two of them, but that's okay. So you have a -4 on top. Now on bottom, you have to add the powers. You have to add 3 to -2, and that's 1, okay? Now, you can cross these out. You can cross out the smaller one, which should be -4. What's the opposite of -4? It'd be +4. So 1 plus 4 is 5, okay? So this m ends up to the power of 5. It's on bottom, but that's okay. That's where I want it because it's positive down there. There's a 1 over it, so it's 1 over m to the 5th. Okay, so underline the expression. Oh, didn't space my lines out very good. So ignore the powers, okay? Your bases, you have a -5 and a 4, okay? Put the -5 in a parentheses, and then your 4. And then your variables, you have x. It's on top twice, but we have a way to add those together. So 1 times 2 is 2. 4 is to the 1. We don't multiply that because it's not in parentheses, so it's 1. Then on the x's, you have 2 of them, so we need to add their powers in a multiplication scenario. So 3 times 2 is 6, and then 3. 6 plus 3 is 9. Okay, here's my powers. They're all positive, so everything stays put. That's a negative, but it's not the power. Okay, so you keep that where it stays. Okay. So -5 times itself, you can evaluate that. That's 25. 4 to the first is 4, and then x to the 9th. Okay. 25 times 4 is 100. So 100 times x to the 9th is simplified. Okay, this looks like a fun one. So make your line through the whole thing. Now on top, ignore the 4, 5, and 3. Those are all powers. You have a 6 and a 2. A base 6 times a base 2. Then variable bases, you got a and b. No sense writing it out twice because we're going to add them. So 6 is to the 1, so it'd just be a 1 because it's not in parentheses. Now the 2, there's a parentheses around the 2, so it goes 2 to the 3rd because 1 times 3 is 3. Now I see 2 bases of a, so I have a 4, and then I add, that's a 1, and then 1 times 3 is 3, so a to the 7th. Okay, b, they also have 2 bases of b here, so you got to take your 5 plus the product of 1 and 3. 1 times 3 is 3. So it's b to the 8th. Now at bottom, you don't have any numerical bases, but you have a and b again. Okay? And 2 a's on bottom, you got a 1 plus, not 2, you got to find the product of 2 and 3 because it's in parentheses, so that's 6. 1 plus 6 is 7, so a to the 7th. B, I got a b to the first, so I got a 1. Not in a parentheses, that's why I'm not multiplying that one. But here, 2 times 3 is 6, so 1 plus 6 is 7. Now, you don't have a 6 on bottom, you don't have a 2 on bottom, you have an a on top and bottom, but they have the same power. So when they have the same power, we can just get rid of both of them at the same time, and a is history. Okay? Now as the b's goes, you got b8 and b7. So let's get rid of 7 smaller, and it was positive 7, so the opposite of positive 7 would be to -7. So that'd be 1. Okay, now all of these powers were positives, so they all stay put. So 6 to the first is 6, 2 to the third, evaluate that. 8 times b to the first, okay? 6 times 8 is 48 times b. You could put a first on there, but if a letter's to the first, it's usually just a letter. Okay, next one, the fraction line's already there for me. So on top, we have a base 3. That's it. Bottom, you have a numerical base of -2, so put that in parentheses if it's negative. Then a variable base of x. So we got my bases set up. 3 to the first, there's a parentheses, but it's not around the 3, so it just stays to the first. Now it's -2 to the first, a parentheses around that, so 1 times -5 is -5. X, 1 times -5 is -5. Okay, now circle your powers, the one with the positive, not that one's positive, so you keep that. These negative ones need to be rewritten as positives. Now if they're on the bottom, I would move them to the top. But when I move that -2 to the top, it's still -2. It's the power that's rewritten as positive, okay? Then the x goes to the top, so I can write that. Now all the powers are positives. Now I can evaluate the exponents. 3 to the first would be 3. -2 to the fifth. It's going to be a negative because it's odd. -32. And then times x to the fifth. So then we can simplify that further by multiplying. 3 times -32. I got -96. Okay, next one. Here you go. This one's going to not take very long. So you got a base of 3, a base of x, base of y, nothing on bottom. So no parentheses, so we just write down the powers that are there. We don't multiply. Okay, now we got a negative power. These two stay put, 3 to the first and y to the 14th, and the x goes downstairs and it goes to a 3. So 3 to the first is 3, y to the 14th, x to the third. Okay, underline that. Remember, if you don't have the fraction line, you make one. Just underline it. So you got 3 times x times y. Okay, they're all in parentheses, so you got to multiply them all by -4. So it's going to be -4. 3 times -4 is -12. That's the only x I have, so I move to the y. Positive 12. Okay, I've circled the negatives because they're going to go down, so we can rewrite them in positive. Okay, so I can evaluate the 3 to the 4th. That's the only one I can really simplify. 81 times x to the 12. Okay, look at the top. You got a 5 and an x and a y. Leave the powers out. We'll deal with those later. On bottom, you have no numerical bases. You just have an x and a y. Okay, let's talk about 5. It'd be to the first. There's a parentheses around it, so we need to distribute 1 to -3, -3. Now the x on top is to the first. 1 times -3 is -3. There are no more x's on top, so now I go to the y. It's just a 7 because it's not in parentheses. Now the x and y on the bottom, this is the only x I have. It's -7. Don't need to multiply because the parentheses stops on the top, and then -4. Now you got some things you can cross out. X and x. -7 smaller. You just crossed out a -7, so the opposite is to +7. That would be 4. So obviously -4 is smaller. Remember, when you subtract, you're really adding the opposite. So the opposite of -4 is 4. Okay? So that's 11. Got a negative power here, so that 5's got to go down, so it can be rewritten as 5 to the third. And on top, you got x to the 4th times y to the 11th. There's no reason to move them. They're already positive. Okay, 5 to the third, that means 5 times 5 times 5 gives me 125.